And with that, I will ask Shelby to go ahead and bring up her presentation and introduce herself. Go ahead, Shelby.
Great. Well, I guess I jumped over too quickly. I guess you guys can see my video. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Awesome. Well, nice to meet you all. I'm happy to share a little bit more about my nonprofit and some of the work that we do at Ocean Rescue Alliance International. You should see my screen now. And so the Ocean Rescue Alliance is a marine conservation and restoration nonprofit. We focus on building artificial infrastructure for different purposes, which include coastal protection, restoration, habitat, as well as ecotourism. Our reef restoration efforts, designing artificial reefs, are really primarily focused on replicating natural reef geology. So we build them to mimic natural reefs and help function as biodiverse habitats. But one of the unique factors that we do is actually incorporate art as a way to connect people back to the ocean. And these create ecotourism sites where people can dive and interact and enjoy marine life. At every single site, we create education and citizen science programs to further form partnerships and conduct research to contribute to sustainable restoration. And so a little bit about our reef systems. Reefs are important really around the globe, and they help aid in coastal protection, creating a biodiverse habitat, providing homes for fish and a variety of marine species. They're considered to be the lungs of the ocean and help with various other things, including even medical applications and cures. Many may not know that some of our best medical innovations have actually come from the ocean, such as sterilization for IVs from horseshoe crab blood. So I really encourage you guys to look into some of the different applications of what our everyday use is off of coral reefs. So they're both economically, but also important for ecosystem services. They have an economic value in Florida alone of $3.4 billion, and various problems plaguing our reef systems around the globe, from pollution, ocean acidification, bleaching, habitat degradation, as well as disease. And disease has been a predominant factor on our Florida reef tract, which is our third largest reef in the world, that has been impacting our reef system. One of the biggest problems I see with marine conservation, is specific to coral restoration, is our missing connection between the ocean and people. It's often out of sight, out of mind, and many may feel that they're too small to help, or that it's too big of a problem to address. This is coupled with a lack of education and awareness. And so we really take pride as an organization in being able to provide direct, tangible measures that every individual can have an impact on the ocean. And one of the things that we do is build artificial reefs to mimic natural reef geology, as I mentioned earlier. And historically, really, artificial reefs have been what you see on the left-hand side of this screen: construction pilings, culverts, ships, the 2 million tires they sunk off of Fort Lauderdale, also known as the Osborne Tire Reef. And this has really been the epitome of a lot of artificial reef programs that typically tend to be trash of land. Our artificial reefs are designed to mimic natural reef geology, which you see on the right-hand side of this screen, that have micro and macro habitat that support biodiversity and different life stages of fish, while incorporating restoration technologies like our coral locks, where you can simply screw in a coral like a bolt. These are also made out of eco-friendly concrete material that's a pH neutral, and we have various different designs that are made for different purposes. This is an example of 1 week versus 9 months of one of our habitat reef modules that's on standard are about 5 by 5 feet. You can see the coral locks of those little circles can actually independently screw in a coral just like a bolt to our reef infrastructure.
So Shelby, let me stop you there.
Sure.
So those coral locks, so are those grown then?
We're going to talk more about it in a little bit.
Right, no problem.
That's just it's made out of the same material. That's a placeholder, so there's no coral on the image that you see, but we're able to simply screw in a living coral into each of those little circles.
Okay, thank you.
I'll share more about the coral locks towards the end. And so in addition to making habitat reefs, we also design breakwaters for coastal protection, reducing 75% of wave energy on average, with goals to increase this resiliency. Also making different adaptations for restoration of corals, oysters, and mangroves, and supporting biodiversity as well as ecotourism. And so art's really the unique factor that really differentiates us. We can take any image, person, or logo and turn them into an artificial reef. And what you see here is Emily Gugliano, the American mermaid, getting scanned and turned into this 13-foot tall mermaid that currently rests in West Palm Beach, Florida, in about 40 feet of water. But the really exciting thing is we also take those digital assets, we can make virtual and augmented realities to allow anyone the experience of diving, as well as a lesson platform to be able to educate around marine conservation and coral restoration. These are some examples of our public art and custom reefs that we've created so far. Being one of our biggest projects, the 1,000 Mermaids Reef, which started off of Riviera Beach and near West Palm, has now grown to about 35 mermaids, so we still have a lot more to go. We really use the mermaid as a symbol to really connect that half human, half fish connection back to the ocean. But we also do a variety of other artistic reefs. We're looking forward to building a Mayan reef with a Mayan community in Mexico, creating a serpent deity called the Clutlan that will serve as a breakwater as well as a coral nursery base, while having Mayan features that really can connect to that immediate culture. We also do memorial reefs like the one you see in the top right-hand side of the screen, which was the Firehawk Memorial for a firefighter who unfortunately passed away. And so it really provides a unique, creative way to connect with community, be able to celebrate a birthday, anniversary, or a loved one in a way that actually makes a tangible impact on the ocean and creating habitat. And so our latest reef initiative with the City of Hollywood, we deployed 25 structures right off of the Diplomat Hotel in about 45 feet of water. This builds on our 1,000 Mermaids project, and we're looking forward this year to be putting out 4 nearshore snorkel sites. So all of the sites we're putting out this summer are actually going to be accessible from shore, which is very exciting because that means everybody can enjoy these resources right off the beach. And so far we've done, again, 25 with the City of Hollywood, but we're also starting a very large project with the City of Miami Beach with Reef Line, which will be an underwater art park that will extend 7 miles. This will be a multi-year project, but these are some of the exciting projects that we're starting this year. And again, once these sites are created, we conduct different citizen science and education workshops, engaging local community members in reef monitoring and restoration efforts, as well as different events. A lot of our programs focus around STEM and educating, and as well as providing opportunities for underserved community members to get engaged with marine conservation, and also opening up the horizon for the blue economy. We really want to encourage the diversity of job opportunities that are available within the ocean space. And we're excited to be ramping up several more programs, which include our Coral Rangers, where we engage middle and high school students around reef restoration efforts, even bringing in principles like hobby fragmentation. I'm not sure if any of you have an at-home fish tank. I do. But we're looking forward to really using a lot of different applications. So far, we've certified around 48 students that otherwise couldn't afford to scuba dive, and we're looking forward to keep building this program in the future with the Coral Rangers. I was getting some feedback. I don't know if somebody has a question or if just someone's not muted. No questions? Okay. So getting to the Coral Lock side, in a second, I really wanted to focus on what current bottlenecks exist within coral restoration. So we've been really efficient on land at scaling tree planting and various other restoration mechanisms. But in the ocean, obviously, there's a lot more factors involved. And so scaling can be quite difficult at the rate that we need to currently. What we focus on is doing rapid attachments, and current attachment mechanisms by other restoration groups include nails, epoxy, zip ties, cement, and a lot of training and cost for materials. These also don't take into consideration site-specific designs, and what I mean by that is every single location we do restoration in is a little different, so you need to make adaptations to meet that immediate need of that local ecology. And a lot of restoration groups tend to take a blanketed approach to restoration. And so where our innovation comes in is with our Coral Lock technologies, which is that threaded frag plug where you can simply screw in a coral like a bolt to our infrastructure. We've outplanted over 30,000 corals with partner institutions by providing these outplanting artificial bases for natural reefs, as well as putting corals out on artificial reefs, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. We have a variety of different base types that are meant to take local ecology into mind. So making site-specific designs that can factor in things like algae or predation on the coral. So a great example in the top left corner, you can see some sea urchins here, which are natural herbivores that reduce algae on coral reef tracts. They've been decimated in recent years throughout the Florida Reef, and there's high priority on restoration of these sea urchins with co-culture of corals. And so what we did was designed a base that you can simply outplant the coral on top, and sea urchins can live underneath, and they help maintain the algae off of those corals. Another side, we've actually, similar to this base that you see on the right-hand side of the screen, I don't have the image of the base with the spikes, but in Key Biscayne, University of Miami, saw heavy parrotfish predation upon the coral fragments that were nice little healthy coral snacks for those fish to eat. One of the adaptations that we made was created spikes that came off of this dome base that prevented parrotfish from eating those corals, allowed them to grow and fuse, and then the spikes were not needed anymore. So that's some really great examples of how just making a small adaptation can increase survivalship of the corals and overall helping increase our efforts and efficiency for coral outplanting. Another design, instead of attaching a staghorn at 3 different points with cements or epoxies, we have a somewhat of a candle cup holder for staghorn and branching coral. And I'll kind of end it here with really our envisionment of transforming coastal communities. We really want to build sites that help protect coastal assets while creating a thriving marine environment that aids in restoration of marine species and creates habitat and connects people together through art. We always want to partner with new groups, so really want to encourage you to find ways to get involved or spread the message. Would be happy to answer any questions you guys may have, and if you're looking to contact us, you can check out our website at oceanrescuealliance.org for a lot of new project updates and information, and contact via email here. And my email individually is just shelby@oceanrescuealliance.org. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask her right now.
All right, thank you, Shelby. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat, that would be great.
Yeah.
So my first question is, so you talk about wave breakwater. Now, I used to live in Virginia Beach, and they did, geez, it had to be several miles of breakwater up there where they just dumped a bunch of concrete into the water, and I mean that was a lot of volume. How would you accomplish that with your structure?
Yeah, so we make a 10-foot long structure, and we change the height based on the needs of that specific environment. So one of the first things that we would do in assessing a new site is doing a hydrodynamic assessment and environmental survey, where we'll scope out what the design and build needs to be for that region. And we can modify modular units to be specific to that site. And we also look at how we're mapping out the hydrology of that. So we would do a placement, whether that's staggered, to create more of a natural reef break in a sense. A lot of times you see jetties, or where people bring in like riprap or limestone boulders. Those a lot of times can be cost efficient because it's less costly than creating a custom mold. But one of the added values that we have is being able to be very strategic about keeping that base height of what you need for wave reduction while creating micro and macro habitat. And we can also incorporate restoration elements. So in some regions, we can actually put mangroves or oysters out on these structures, as well as corals. But when we're talking about up the coast, we obviously wouldn't do corals or even biological restoration in all areas. New Jersey has some of the heaviest beach nourishment in the states, especially as you're going up the East Coast, and we're seeing millions and billions of dollars poured into dumping sand on the beach to keep it there. And so what we're advocating for is a sustainable switch eventually to coastal infrastructure. This will take a lot of different stakeholder engagement. And so our goal is to really be able to diversify that. And a lot of that's done through incentivizing cities, hotels, or developers to actually become part of this solution, rather than just relying on taxpayer dollars to fight coastal resilience.
Okay. All right, so Norman Trotter had a question. Norman, if you could unmute.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon. So with the rise in the ocean temperature, how has that impacted your work? And has there been a change in the design to mitigate the temperature rise? Over.
Great question. So one of the things that we do on really the coral restoration front, actually we're really excited. We're opening our first coral lab next month. So we're getting really close here to opening up our own coral lab. But one thing that we do is work with universities and other coral groups that are actually looking at genotypes that are already stress and temperature resilient. And we're outplanting corals that are already surviving and thriving in this current climate. But one of the biggest benefits that we see with using artificial reefs is we can actually build nurseries in areas in this current climate that corals can survive, rather than just focusing on doing restoration at, in the Keys we've actually done assisted migration studies where we've taken corals all the way from the Keys and Fort Lauderdale and actually outplanted them on our reefs in West Palm and Jupiter with the University of Miami to look at how they can survive in some of these cooler waters. And we've seen great effects. So all the corals there have been thriving and surviving. And that really gives good promise into where we could actually be adaptive in this current climate and outplanting strategically in places that we know are a little bit cooler, that are away from disease, and we can build more resiliency up the coastline that's actually in the water doing in-situ nurseries versus having to do everything on land for a nursery-based approach.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. So Craig Wiley, you had a question?
Yes, more of a comment and then perhaps a collaboration. So I'm at Naval Undersea Warfare Center, Keyport. We do a lot of UUV work. And so we're trying to bring autonomy science forward. In that effort, we are running a challenge with universities that just went live. And what we chose as a focus, because we needed a target that was accessible by the college kids. So we did something unclassified. And what we centered on were the old tire dumps. And so we're using autonomy to go find these old tire dumps and map them out so that they can be pulled out and remediated. But looking at that, once we have the divers go down and pull these tire dumps out, it might be a good location for you to then go back in and help with the after remediation. And I don't know if in your studies out there, if you're running across tire dumps where we might be able to apply this technology to help map that out. And there may be something there anywhere as a collaboration.
Yeah, definitely. We're always open to doing a new reef site, and actually specific to the Osborne tire cleanup, we've worked with a few contractors like Four Oceans taking out tires, as well as a few different environmental groups. And our goal, I mean, they have a lot more tires obviously to remove, but the goal would be to replace an artificial reef there once those tires are out. And actually, if not many of you know, Osborne's not the only tire reef in Florida. There's actually hundreds of other sites. Osborne's just the biggest, unfortunately. So on the west coast of Florida, we're actually potentially working with Tampa Bay Estuary Program. There's a few tire sites within Tampa Bay as well as outside of Tampa Bay in the St. Pete Clearwater area that we're looking to do some mitigation with putting out artificial reefs once those tires are either removed or concealed. It just depends on resource impacts, but always open to that. So if you guys have any projects that you're interested in putting out artificial reefs after, certainly contact us. Always happy to collaborate.
Well, that's a handy location for us because we do an awful lot with Panama City. There's another Navy lab down there. So we could take our technology, throw it on their platforms, and they could cruise on over to St. Pete, Tampa for you and scan the area. If not map out all the tire sites, at least map out where, because they have side scan sonars on their SAS.
Mm-hmm.
So we can do SAS scans and probably map out the existing coral reefs for you so you can look at the condition. Anyway,
that's great.
I think
another suggestion for if you haven't partnered with them, I don't know if you've heard of Allen Coral Atlas. There's a lot of different community platforms that have a variety of just data contributions. So, something that I think we look to in the future is working with some groups like Allen Coral Atlas that'll take both satellite imagery as well as working with more refined like the SAS tools like you mentioned, to be able to get future project suggestions based on what the topography is and needs are, like how the coast is eroding. So would be happy to connect you with them if you're interested. They have a lot of different data contributors that a lot of people access their platform in MySpace.
Yeah, to feed our autonomy, we're using an awful lot of data feeds from both NOAA and Naval Oceanographic, NAVO, we call them. So those feeds are coming in. So it sounds like this might be an addition to those feeds and just make the models more robust.
Yes.
So yeah, I think there's something there.
Looks like we have another question.
Yeah, Norman, go ahead.
Yes. As far as the ocean turbines going up, is there any collaboration with firms that are putting those things in the ocean that you would do something around those structures to mitigate, the damage that's being done by putting them in, but also build up that?
Yeah, so we haven't worked with any groups or companies putting up turbines yet. Would love to. Actually have a lot of creative ideas that could go on the structure itself as well as around it that could make it more habitable in terms of just supporting biodiversity in those areas, as well as potentially protecting those bases of the infrastructure itself of those turbines by putting more structures around it that can be a storm buffer. Have not worked with them yet, but would be happy to in the future.
Yes, Eugene. I mean, I can see, the nuclear community as well, because they're usually by water. I know there's the one up on Hutchinson Island. There's a plant up there, and that water is usually pretty warm. I know that one attracts a lot of manatee. I used to live up there.
Yeah, a lot of the intakes actually, they have a constant program at a lot of the nuclear facilities, like the in-water research is stationed at the one, I think it's near Port St. Lucie. I can't recall where exactly it is, but in-water research is a turtle nonprofit. They do rehabilitation and also always will relocate turtles that come into that intake. We haven't worked with any nuclear plants, but one thing that we are doing some sub projects with is a DARPA award was awarded to University of Miami for doing breakwater research. The defense agencies put a lot of priority, especially for coastal defense bases that are on the water, to build hybrid artificial reefs that incorporate some of the principles like we discussed with our infrastructure that can meet a breakwater design to reduce wave energy, protect that coastal asset while creating habitat and be regenerative by doing restoration of corals that will rebuild themselves. So I really do see a shift and a lot of priorities both from like a defense side and strategy for coastal defense in the future. I think is really leaning heavily towards more strategically designed infrastructure in the ocean. So I'm really happy to be seeing like more companies popping up in this space, more research being allocated to look at this. And, for anyone on the call who's involved with any of these things, we're always happy to collaborate, also support. We can provide our coral locks as well as mangrove lock and oyster spat mats to any existing infrastructure. So you don't have to just go put out an artificial reef. We can actually modify existing structures that are in the water.
Okay. So Jason, Papafotis, Jeremy, you put comments in. Did you have questions? Anything you want to bring up for Shelby?
Unfortunately, they're not solid questions. They're just pieces of the presentation that sparked other thoughts, and try not to make an obviously already lots of pieces moving, hey, why don't we do everything on the kitchen sink? But a couple of thoughts that I had. You mentioned the concrete you use is pH neutral. The ocean acidification is one of the fun things that's destroying our planet and killing reefs. I know there are some concretes or some concrete substitutes that are claiming to be carbon negative or carbon negative or absorb CO2 over their lifespan. I have no idea if that works in water. I have no idea if that would work in ocean water.
So good point there. It's claims. I'm heavily interested in it as well, and we're definitely going to be exploring that pathway and experimenting, adding it to our structures. But quite frankly, as coming from a scientist, I haven't seen any release studies, and of course everyone has their own patented mix that they can't release what's in it, but you can at least release the replicated studies and measurements of CO2 removal or sequestration. And I frankly have not seen any studies that have been demonstrative of that consistently. Although there are a lot of companies claiming it, and I do think that we can get there. I do not know of any company, to my knowledge, and again, I'm not just a concrete expert, but coming from being able to view that from a scientific approach, I'm not aware of anyone that's achieved that in a repeated way. So I'm excited to see where that side of the industry goes, and I do think that we can get there, and we definitely will be part of the toolbox of integrating that and testing that in the ocean too.
So your in-ocean incubator seems like a great spot to try and partner with a lot of different people for research. See if you could get one of the wind turbine companies to donate the effort of putting one of their anchors in the water near your incubator, so you could use it as okay, this is what we can do with this structure. This is how we can not interfere with its maintenance, but also use it to provide habitat to increase its structure. The ocean autonomy things, are any of the reefs around the United States threatened by invasive species? Or I know the ones in the Great Barrier Reef and a few others have some various problems with some nasty invasive species, and some of that's temperature change and some of that's humans introducing things that shouldn't be in that part of the world.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Good.
Yeah, I mean, with us being in Florida, I'm more familiar with our Florida species, although we are doing some international projects. I mean, Florida is kind of an epicenter of invasives from both land, terrestrial to ocean. On the ocean side, one of our biggest, human introduced invasives is the lionfish, which many are familiar with. We even have like bounties for them. FWC does an annual event for hunting them. They're even listed at some Publixes and supermarkets to eat, which is more of a newer in the last recent years option to eat them.
They're delicious.
Tasty, huh?
I'm told they're delicious.
They are very good. If people aren't into, if you don't like fishy fish, it's a white fish that's kind of sweet and doesn't taste fishy at all. So I definitely recommend trying it. It's something that's heavily impacted our reef system here, especially because they can thrive at many different depths. And so what we see is them going to really deeper parts of the reefs as well as wrecks, and there'll be thousands of lionfish, and they basically eat anything that can fit in their mouth. They're part of the grouper family. That's one of the biggest ones for us, but also on a more microbial side, all of this dredging and beach nourishment, and part of some of the attribution for stony tissue loss disease has been somewhat linked to the Port Miami expansion, where they've dredged and brought up sediment that, if you can imagine, especially everyone being aware with COVID, there's many living things that we can't see around everything. And so in sediment, we also have different bacteria microbiomes. And when you're disturbing that, you're bringing up bacteria and viruses into the water column that we may not know how they'll have an impact. And in an ocean environment, once that's unleashed, there's no really putting that back together. So we've seen a lot of impacts from dredging and nourishment in Florida, especially to our reef systems. In Miami, multiple reef tracks have actually been smothered by sand. So I'd say that's one of the biggest threats, is actually just human causes impacting our reef system here. But on the invasive side, definitely lionfish are probably our most well-known culprit in Florida, but there's many other components too.
Just thinking that you might be able to, in your research lab, incorporate some of the autonomous diving robots to make the autonomous hunters for the lionfish, to let them test their machinery in a safer environment, maybe even with dummy targets so they're not killing anything else. But again, these are a lot of these are fairly fragmented thoughts. What about underwater turbines? There's a lot of research with tidal turbines or other moving objects. I'm pretty sure divers don't want to be in close proximity to a large man-made moving apparatus underwater. But if that could be incorporated near one of your reefs or near one of your breakwaters without the things that you add to it increasing its fouling or it making the environment unsuitable for your things, that would be a pretty good collaboration as well. I'm sorry, I'm just throwing out ideas without actually giving you, hey, talk to this company or that company. They're just thoughts that occurred to me, and I don't want to eat up all the time.
I've actually, I'm an advisor and a director for a company called Tidal Sales, which is a Norwegian company for more tidal energy, but we're interested in eventually incorporating energy into wave breaks, but we're years and years from that. There's a lot of research that needs to go into that. So kind of exactly what you last mentioned, I think, is a possibility in the future. That is not the primary focus of our nonprofit, as we're mostly restoration, conservation based. Although I do think it's needed to look at alternative sources of sustainable and renewable energy. So I think it's a worthwhile topic to explore and research. It's just unfortunately not our top priority, but we're always open to partnering with people. In relation to our existing permits, that like something like that would take really multiple years in finding a pilot site to be able to do something like that at. Our current ones, we really wouldn't be able to, just from public proximity, and most of our projects, we need like 6 to 10 permits to even put some of the structures in the water. So it's a lot of coordination between agency, federal, and state groups, but we're always open to working with existing companies that are also have that similar mission to explore it. But we're probably not going to spearhead anything like that for quite some time until we get more and more projects under our belt, and then have some alignment with strategic partners that are headed that way as well.
Do you have any contact with PNNL's Squim Marine Lab? on the Pacific coast?
I do not, no.
Actually, I might actually be able to give you a contact of somebody useful. I'll see your email's in the thread. I will see if I can find an appropriate contact.
Shelby@oceanrescuealliance.org.
Thank you, Jeremy. So I have a couple questions here and get people thinking again. So first question, and I'm going to ask them both, and then you can answer them. So the first question is, you've got to get these things from land to the site. Do you have enough manpower and boat power to do that? Is that something that the Navy or the Coast Guard could assist with? And people from the Navy could help me with that on this call. The second question that I'm going to ask is, what about like the Chesapeake Bay? And I don't think it's as big of an issue in the oceans as it is in the bays, but with all of the nutrients from fertilizers and things like that that are running off into the bay, and you get all the algae and stuff like that, are you looking at ways that you could mitigate that by putting in more beneficial plants and attracting beneficial animals that would either, use up that oxygen or use up those nutrients and prevent the harmful things? Kind of like if you could do something in the, at the where the Mississippi River pours into the Gulf to minimize red tide, kind of.
Yeah. So I'll answer your last question first, then I'll go back to the logistics question. On the biological side, when looking at eutrophication and impacts from different outflow, one of the things we like to do is use nature as a solution. So in that case, we look at the region's available resources, natural resources that actually address those issues by nature. So for example, in Florida, we have harmful red tide events that happen near the Tampa region. Oysters, mangroves, seagrasses all help mitigate that. And so what we try to do is incorporate a green to the gray infrastructure that we'd outplant either oysters, mangroves, or seagrasses that would actually help address those factors. Our research isn't just focused around looking at different water parameters, but we always incorporate being able to enhance water quality with our projects depending on the region and the focus. Of course, we could do more hyper solutions. There's actually a lot of groups trying to look at similar to a big fish tank, which I actually have one right here. If you look at the bottom of a sump, there's different functions like a protein skimmer. There was a company that spun up in Fort Lauderdale that was looking to put big protein skimmers on different vessels in rivers to help filter out some of the toxins and heavy bio loads. I do think that there's a balance within technology that we can use it to help purify and clean some of our waters. But in our case as a nonprofit, we really focus on doing that natural restoration. We can do living shorelines that help with water. And being able to actually sequester nutrients into that ground, as well as doing oyster, mangrove, and seagrasses. So that's kind of our focus. And on the logistics side, our process is essentially our reef manufacturer, our primary reef manufacturer is located in Boynton, Florida. We can always send molds to new areas to actually manufacture more closely to the site, which will help reduce cost. But typically we'll make the concrete structures on land with various molds and some other techniques. We're exploring some 3D printing, but we really haven't pressed that as a full avenue for our artificial reefs yet. And once those are constructed, we then put them on a truck to move over to a barge or a large vessel that can actually go and sink them to our designated sites. We've worked with some smaller barge, flat barge operators, as well as just larger vessels that actually have a crane on board and also an A-frame that will lower each structure down strategically. We've used divers with comms to really place these structures in specific locations. We're always open to talking to new contractors and finding creative ways to be able to be more economical about how we deploy these structures. Obviously, with a lot of you being in the marine space, you guys know how much marine logistics costs. So we're always open to exploring new ways to get some of this infrastructure out into the ocean more efficiently, safely, and cost efficiently as well. Something that we're looking to, and I actually just had someone reach out in the Maldives and a few Indo-Pacific islands that want some of our reefs. That's where it gets really challenging for us, just as we haven't done some of those more longer range projects, and being able to go into other countries Also working with different governments and logistics to be able to safely do this is something that I'd say we need a little more assistance with. We're just now starting to get into some of that. We've done a small project in Barbuda, but we're looking to do some throughout the Caribbean and potentially some Indo-Pacific projects as well. So hopefully that answered both of your questions.
Yes, it did. All right, so Joe Gamez, you had a question? If you can unmute.
She answered it. We're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna ask Craig Bliley and Bill Venezia. You may be able to answer these. I'm not sure, but aren't divers similar to like pilots where they have to have so many hours to stay certified? Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, and we host a dive locker at Keyport. It's full of Navy
Okay.
divers.
So would there be some synergy with diver training and diver qualifications to assist Shelby in her efforts?
Well, most of what we do up here, this is the cold water diving certification range, if you will. So all the SOC divers come to Keyport to get certified in cold water. SOC Central is, headquartered down in Tampa, so I think they have access to all the warm water they need down there. But yeah, you could probably go talk to SOCOM S&T.
Okay. Yeah, that would be Lisa. I can talk to Lisa.
Yeah, and make the connection there. There may be divers there. Probably the same thing applies to the lab at Panama City. I'm sure they have a dive locker as well, and that's nearby, so they could go do Florida work.
Okay. All right. Bill, do you have anything? Bill Venezia? I'm not hearing you, Bill. But Bill worked at the Fort Lauderdale, corrosion facility.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are you getting me now, Eugene?
I can.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have a dive locker anymore, and we're very local to Shelby. I tuned in part to just catch up on things.
Okay. No problem.
And another interesting thing to note, which really this hasn't been done in full, but an exploration, obviously dredging and other things are needed for ports, and doing something with that dredge material. We're also looking to potentially explore how can we utilize that and remake that into an artificial reef more sustainably rather than suspending sediments or putting them on beaches. So there's a lot of really exciting future research in the artificial reef space that we're really seeing starting to ramp up, that can kind of meet all the needs of coastal protection, but also still being able to meet the needs like economically for port development and keeping certain shipping logistics consistent. So that's something important to note that some people may not be aware of.
So then when you build your reefs, are you far enough off the coast that when the storms erode the sand that they're not covering your reefs?
Yeah, so all of our current sites, we've had at around 30 to 60 feet. All the sites we're doing just this summer through fall are going to be between 13 feet to 25 feet. So I'll answer that question maybe a little more next year. But we don't anticipate any active beach nourishment projects around some of our project sites or sedimentation to completely cover our reefs that we're putting out. So we aim to stay away from active nourishment sites because they could be covered. If you're not doing a localized investment to do actual breakwaters across the whole region and active beach nourishments going on, you could have sedimentation cover it up.
Okay. And then another question. So obviously these are dive sites and there are dive companies that take people there. This is a tourist type thing. Do you benefit from that? And if so, would you be able to load up the chat or provide me with a slide that I can put with this so that if people want to go see these things, they can?
Yeah, so if you look on our website under our projects, we give the coordinates, and honestly, any of the dive operators in that area you can go with. We don't have any existing relationships where like we get a percent of whoever they bring there. We just hope in good faith people will continue to support us. I've had dive charters we've worked with in the past, such as Calypso Dive Charter in Riviera Beach, as well as Black Fat Flags, Pure Vita, They've actually given us some free charter days where we've gone to do research. And because they actually do bring people out to go dive the site, they've provided a free vessel for us to do the research at times. But that is not a consistent relationship. Although, and even the American Dream, for example, in Fort Lauderdale for our Hollywood site, which I highly recommend, all the charters I mentioned, they take us out as at a discounted rate, just being supportive of our work. So we don't have any kind of direct give back program with the charters. That might be a good thing to implement in the future, but we don't want to force people to have to do that. We want people to enjoy these resources, although that would be nice if we could get some continued support for people coming out. But I'm happy to provide some charter suggestions. If you look around both of those regions, both the Riviera Beach Marina is a great way to get to our 1,000 Mermaids project site near West Palm. And the City of Hollywood Reef recommend going with the American Dream out of Fort Lauderdale. They have a great boat to go out on. Also, our coordinates are on our website, so you can, if you have your own boat, you're welcome to go out there as well on your own.
Okay. So Robert, I can't see the article that you put in there. Robert Rail, is that associated with? Shelby, I think I lost you.
I'm still here. Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, no, I was talking to Robert Rail. He put something in the chat for you.
Okay.
All right. So I guess for the last few minutes that you have, what is it that the innovation ecosystem can do besides donating funds? What can we do to support your efforts?
I would leave that to maybe, I mean, you guys have more of an expertise as to what you guys can do and what you can provide based on some of the information I've gave to you. I mean, always open to collaborate on new research. We sometimes need volunteers for outplanting or restoration efforts, but not as consistently for coral outplanting. We have a whole dive listserv that people can sign up on a mail list for that if they're interested. But we do have a lot of people who want to volunteer and dive with us. There's a lot of, not so fun things to volunteer that we always need help with. Some of that can be like logistics or media outreach, or even just like hands-on with our structures, open to research collaborations. I would say, maybe connections based for new project initiatives, even outside of Florida, new pilot project suggestions. We're open on all fronts, but maybe, if you have any suggestions based on your community and how you guys typically engage, I'd appreciate any feedback or thoughts there.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we can definitely help with the media side of it, but there's a lot of military, a lot of federal, a lot of Navy. I can see.
Yeah, I mean,
up towards
really
Norfolk,
on the federal
out in San Diego.
Yeah, and Navy contract side, we'd love to work a little bit more with some government agencies. There's still a lot of need for coastal protection and infrastructure. So, if any of you guys have more connections into the military contracting side, that would be helpful. We're definitely wanting to look at more projects down that path, especially because we're able to do a little bit larger project initiatives. For example, the one we just did with the City of Hollywood was only 25 structures, but we're getting ready to do 50. That's getting matched with another 50. So, we'd like to get some thousands of structures out rather than 50 to 100 at a time. So, any suggestions there? And of course, always fiscal support also helps.
Okay. And then Troy, is that for you personally, or what's your involvement with internships? Troy Orwin?
I do have a personal interest. I have a daughter that's interested in it, but I also represent the AOC as well as a couple other nonprofit advocacy groups that are big into STEM, and just want to know if you offered internships. And if you did, I would get the word out.
We do. We have a variety of different internships, even remote internships. So it doesn't have to be an in-person opportunity as well. So yeah, feel free to reach out and we can get in contact and share more information.
Copy. Thank you.
All right. So then the best way to get you is email and through the website then.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So my email would be great.
Okay.
And it's in the chat.
All right. Yeah, would that be better than LinkedIn, Shelby?
Either works. Either works. If they want to, if you want to reach me directly, that's there. I can also put my LinkedIn in the chat if you guys would prefer. You can see a lot more of our project initiatives on our website, which I also included in the chat. But any platform works.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody? Any last questions? We got about 3 minutes. Okay. Thank you very much, Shelby. I hope this was beneficial for you. I really enjoyed having you here. Great things that you're doing. And yeah, I'll reach out to you afterwards and see what we can do to help.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks, Eugene. Nice to meet you guys, and feel free to reach out at any time.
All right.
All right. Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.
Okay. So that was great. Thank you for the interaction, everybody. Thank you for the help. Definitely like to get more not-for-profits and on here, as well as for-profit companies and the different sectors, different industries.